Hi everyone, and welcome to the Game Breakdown Podcast, the podcast where we break down lots of different games. I promise I'm going to think of a better tagline soon. So excuse the sound of my voice. I don't know what's going on. Hopefully not COVID, but something's going on, and I sound interesting.
You sound off key.
Off key. That's a
Off
really good way of putting it. I sound like Jodie Marsh, I think. Buy my weight loss supplements, you know.
Fucking
But
hell.
hopefully it doesn't ruin the episode, and hopefully I can cut out all of my sneezing and coughing and sniffing.
Hopefully.
We'll give it a go. So today we're going to be talking about one of my absolute favourite games. And Carrie, do you want to tell the people what game we're talking about today?
Today we are talking about the Resident Evil 2 remake.
We are indeed one of my absolute faves. So we chose to talk about that today because obviously I've mentioned before, it's one of my absolute favourite franchises. I love all the Resident Evils. I know pretty much all there is to know about them. And Carrie has recently started to dip her toes into the RE waters. And not so long ago, she did play Resident Evil 1 and then she jumped onto Resident Evil 2 Remake.
Mm-hmm.
And she streamed the whole thing on Twitch.
Yes. So basically, I've kind of done it backwards, I guess, like playing the remakes instead of the originals.
Mm-hmm.
But like, I just feel like now's the perfect time to jump into them. And so basically, I finished obviously Resi 2 now. And I just
Mm-hmm.
absolutely love it. Like carrying on from Resi 1, I just think it's brilliant. Like, especially not having anything to compare it to and just looking at it with fresh eyes, I just feel like the game itself, I don't think I've really got a bad thing to say about it. I know it was
Oh.
like, oh, are you agreeing or are you
Oh.
disagreeing?
No, I'm just saying it's interesting. That's really interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, I mean, obviously, I don't know whether that's because I have nothing to compare it to, but like,
Mm-hmm.
just like as you know, freshly going in, once I finished it, I was like, there's not one thing about that game that I didn't enjoy, you know?
It's really interesting that you say that because in some ways I agree with you. I mean, we'll get into it in a moment, but there are some things that it didn't do correctly if you base it on the original. And not just like storyline stuff, like actual game mechanics, but it didn't ruin the game for me. But so it left you with a good taste in your mouth. And do you think that you would play the third one? Like, do you think it's you're invested enough and you're enjoying it enough to say, right, I'm going to move on to the third installment?
Yeah, definitely. I'm completely hooked now, so I kind of just want to go through all of them for sure. I hope they all live up to Resi 2 at the
Oh,
moment.
interesting. Okay.
But we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. So in that case,
Okay.
stay tuned for a Resi 3 episode, which should be coming soon then. Okay, so Resident Evil 2 Remake. When I played the remake, I was obviously excited for this game for a really long time. When they announced the remake, I was like screaming because it is such a good game. The original is so good that I couldn't wait to play the remade version. And in my honest opinion, I think they did a really, really good job. Like, I think they did a better job with the Resident Evil 2 remake than they maybe did with the RE1 remake. And I don't know whether or not I'm going to get crucified for that opinion, but I just think
Hmm.
I just really enjoyed it. I really, really enjoyed it. What do you think of it now that you're a Resi know-it-all?
No, I love it. I think it's really like quite interesting that you think it's better than the remake of the first one because obviously from
Mm-hmm.
my understanding, I know that the first remake brought out added loads of like new content from the original
Mm-hmm.
game, which would have been in my opinion, I think that's like a really good thing.
Yeah.
So, what is it about RE1 that you don't think is as good as RE2? Like in remake
Um,
sense.
I don't think that it just, I don't know. I just think that when it comes to RE1, they remade it completely from the way it was. But so they basically took the original and gave it a fresh coat of paint, which is fine, and they added some extra content, which is fine. But for me, I think they should have been. I don't know. It's hard because Resident Evil 1 remake was made such a long time ago compared to the modern remakes.
Yeah.
So I think they could have done a little bit more, possibly change the style of play. Like I've said before, that I would like to see a Resident Evil 1 remake because the way they've done 2 and 3, the play style for me is so interesting that I'd like to see number one in that way, because the
Mm.
mansion is so detailed, and I we've not seen the mansion in a 3D environment. We've only seen it pre-rendered in both the original and the remake, and I'd really love them to see, like for us to see a fully realized 3D mansion that's like interactable and destructible, all that kind of stuff. I'd really love to see that. So that's my only thing, really. I think they're both fantastic remakes, and I suppose really the only thing that lets two down, I suppose, is that they left something out from the original. Whereas number one, I don't know if they left anything out. To me, there was just not as much nostalgia with the first remake than the second remake. I don't know if that's even the best way to explain it, but I feel like playing the first remake, I didn't get those like tingles, if you know what I mean. But playing the second remake, I was like, oh my god, I'm here. Like I felt more connected to it.
Yeah.
If that nonsense makes any sense to anyone, I'm ill. Sorry.
No, I get what you're saying. I think it's because like the start of Resi 2
Hmm.
is straight away you're in it, you know? Like, I mean, I was
Yeah.
basically, right, so coming from obviously RE1, which I thought looked beautiful anyways, because obviously
Hmm.
it was on the GameCube, it looks pretty good. Um, I couldn't get over how stunning RE2 was, and it kind of made me realize, like, wow, like we've really jumped, you know.
What a
And
step up.
what a step up. And like part of me was kind of gutted that I'd never played the original to really kind of get the feeling of it, but I could almost feel it in a way to see why people were like, wow, like I'm so glad this happened. Um, and I just, yeah, I was just taken back by it, and the controls of it felt really good. I mean, straight away, I because the thing with RE1 is it's a really slow pace, and
Yeah.
RE2 is still slow paced, but the pacing of it, I don't know, it doesn't feel slow, but it can be, you know.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, it just I think overall I just felt like the improvement straight off the bat, but it still felt like a Resident Evil game, because that was one thing
Yeah.
that worried me, because I thought with it being so modern, are they gonna really take out that kind of classic Resi vibe to it? And obviously
Hmm.
because Resi 1 was so like fresh in my mind, um, but I found the puzzles to be like consistent enough. The music, I played with the original soundtrack
Good. The
because
only way to play.
yeah, everyone was like play with the original soundtrack. I was like okay. Um, and yeah, like the soundtrack is so eerie, it's brilliant. I preferred
Hmm.
it to the remake soundtrack. That's why I was like, yeah, okay, I'll definitely play it that way. Not that the original the remake's original soundtrack's bad. I just think the actual original RE2 soundtrack's really, really good.
I think the remake soundtrack is actually really good. I don't think it's better than the original, because the original, I mean, I think we probably love it in different ways. For me, I love it for the nostalgia, but also I feel like it captures the what's the word? The look of the rooms that you walk into. Like when you walk into the main hall and you hear that really echoey grand music that I can hear in my head now, like that for me sets the tone of how big this place is, how frightening the environment is, blah blah blah. And the remake still does that really well, just not as good as the original for me. But I completely agree with you on the pacing of the game too, because for me, the pacing of RE1 is a little bit too slow, and the pacing of RE3 when you eventually get there is a little bit too quick. And I feel like RE2 is paced perfectly. Like it's just enough story mixed with just enough action, with just enough puzzle. Like you come across things in an equal balance, and you don't feel like God, I've not come across a zombie in an hour. I've just been doing puzzles, or you don't feel the opposite. Like I've just been shooting for ages. I've not really progressed in the game. Like everything is done really well paced, and I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, and I thought the lighting of it as well, like the lighting in
Mm,
RE2 is just awesome.
really
Um,
good.
really, yeah, really creepy. My favorite thing about the original soundtrack though is it's more sinister, and I really like
Yes,
that
one hundred
about it.
percent.
It gave me like sometimes I'd be in a room and it'd be quiet, and then Mr. X would stop chasing me, which we'll get to Mr. X properly like further on.
Yeah, yep.
But he'd stop, say, chase me, and then yeah, the sound would just come out, and I'd be like, I do not like this, you know, like it
Hmm.
just makes the hair on the back of my neck stand up. I was like, this is awful. But yeah, overall, first impressions of the first. Well, I've played. Okay, so I've played Claire A and Leon B now, so I've got the whole canon
You've done
story.
yeah, the canon
Yeah.
story. Yep.
And I love that. Like, I really like. liked how well they fitted together. I didn't feel like there was any repetition, even though there was, which was quite impressive. You know, like even though I was running around the same sort of areas, I felt like it still felt different. I was trying to figure out where I was though in Leon's sort of section compared to Claire's. At some points, I was like, okay, so like, is Claire just left here? Like, is she not here yet? Like, there was parts like that confused me. Um, but yeah, I think overall, like, they really balanced out to each other. Like, I don't know what your opinion is of that, but for me, I just felt like it really worked quite well. I don't think because I definitely saw like more sides to the story, if that makes
Uh,
sense.
yeah, yeah.
You're looking at me. What have I said?
No, no, look, it's different for you because you've never played the original. How this is where I think the game failed. Not failed completely, utterly awfully, but it really dropped the ball in my opinion because the way they handled the A and B scenarios weren't very good because there was no difference in the game story essentially apart from the obvious Ada and Sherry differences. The whole point is it's meant to be an A and B scenario. So, for example, Claire A, Leon B. You're meant to be Claire doing one thing, and then Leon is doing the things that you didn't do. So, in the original, if you play the original, you come across different people at different points in the game. So, for example, if you're playing Claire A and she's fighting William Birkin, when Leon gets into his fights in B, he's not fighting William Birkin, he's fighting the G sample. So, they're coming across different bosses. The way the remake does it is you're both fighting William at the same time. If you have it as a time frame and that Claire and Leon are entering the mansion at similar times, the way it progresses, they're both experiencing the same fights, and they
Mm,
shouldn't be because you shouldn't have to fight William in that place because Claire's just beat him in there and he should be down the. You know what I mean? That's where they kind of failed in that sense, and it didn't quite make sense. And the end bosses were different in the original, so if you were Claire A and your big boss battle was with William, Leon's boss would be the G experiment, and they would have to fight that, and they would lead into each other. And then I don't know if you've played. I can't remember if it's A and B that it works, but did you have this separate fight with William on the train at the end where he takes over the train?
Um, yeah. So when I was playing as Claire, he jumps on top of the train, and then you get like obviously the massive fucking machine gun thing, turret gun, whatever you call it. That part. Right, let's
No,
just.
that's not what I mean. Do you know? See, this is why I don't think you got to it. Where William then takes over the train, and you have to fight him in the last carriage.
Oh no, yeah, I did that
Yeah,
bit.
okay.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
yeah, he's right at the back. Yeah, I did that. That was Leon's. That were no, it wasn't. That was wait, was it?
it
No,
probably
it
was
was.
Leon's because you did Claire first. You've only played it twice,
It
haven't you?
was Leon's because I remember running back, and then that's when, and then I was for some reason I kept dying, and I was like, "What am I doing wrong?" And then it was
Hmm.
because I should have used like grenades or something, you know. But like, yeah, so that there was that bit. You also these are all spoilers, by the way. We should probably tell
Oh yeah, we're
people
gonna
just
spoil everything.
warning. And then you fight Mr. X as well on like the
Yeah,
lift as Leon. So Leon's fights were quite different, apart from obviously Birkin's fight
yeah.
um in the station, which was a bit weird because I think that's probably why I was confused with like timing because I thought why is that happening.
Because they're meant to
um
be experiencing things at the same time, and it makes it look like William's in two places at once when he can't be. And also the whole thing with Mr. X. Mr. X is not supposed to be in both playthroughs. He's only meant to be in one of them. He's meant to be in the B playthrough. So the whole idea is that you play through the whole game once as Claire. You never come across Mr. X at all. And then you play Leon's B scenario, and then suddenly this thing comes out of nowhere and attacks you, and it's meant to shock you because you're like, that wasn't in the previous game. Like it's meant that was another thing. They didn't divide the scenarios enough for me. There was too many similarities in both
right.
of them, and there wasn't that whole vision of I haven't got to do that bit because Claire's already done that, or I haven't got to fight that boss because Claire's currently fighting that boss in quotation marks, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I get what you mean. So yeah, because I was thinking that they feed it in quite well, but like now you've explained it, it makes so
Hmm.
much more sense that there's not actually like any kind of relation in the stories when you think of it
Yeah.
in that sense. So yeah, I totally.
But it does a good job of it because you as a
Yeah.
new player didn't really pick up on that first time, did you
No,
really?
no, because I guess I just made assumptions like, well,
Mhm.
maybe because I'm now Leon, like Claire didn't have to do it, but really that doesn't make sense to Claire's story and the canon story and Leon's story. So I guess now you've said it, I'm like, okay, like none of this would actually make sense.
Yeah.
Somewhere along the line it's got to be different. I still enjoyed it though, like that's for sure, but I get now where they could have probably put a little bit more thought into that.
That's the problem. I mean, the original and the way the original worked, I'm now trying to think about how they did the remake because I think how am I thinking of it? Yeah, okay. So in the original, what happens is Leon is driving through the city and he's suddenly finds a zombie on the floor and he gets very worried and scared and he's running around and he bumps into Claire. They both get into his police car and they go driving towards the police station. And then if you're playing the A scenario, a zombie appears in the back of the car and they crash into a lamppost, and then a tanker is coming behind them with a zombie driver who's been like eaten, is dying, and it's just like free flowing, and they have to jump out of the car before it explodes. And Leon gets out on the right, Claire gets out on the left, and explodes, and they're separated, and they both have to meet up at the police station through different means. In the B scenario, the zombie's in the back of the car and starts to like try to bite them, and Leon flips the car, and the back of the car hits the lamppost, and Claire gets out where Leon's meant to get out, and Leon gets out where Claire's supposed to get out, and their stories differ.
Right.
So, like, that is the whole point. You're meant to start in a different area and experience the B scenario of each character and the A scenario of each character. So, Claire would meet Sherry in two different points, and Leon would meet Ada in two different points. And, like, that's how the original played it. And the remake did a good job, just not a great job, is
Yeah.
my opinion.
Fell short slightly of that kind of having the freedom of that, the flexibility, shall we say? Like it just totally kind of wiped that away, didn't it?
Yeah,
When you put it like
completely.
that.
But like it didn't like that's coming from me who's a massive fan and played them over and over again. And really it didn't ruin the game. It just annoyed me when I played it. I finished it and I was like, oh, okay then.
Yeah.
But I still really liked it. And like you who's never touched it, still really enjoyed the game, still said it was fantastic. Like you haven't been scarred and think, oh, well, that didn't make complete sense.
Yeah.
Like you still enjoyed it. Like it doesn't ruin it in that sense. It's just a bit like, oh, well, you could have done this, but okay.
Yeah. I think that's what it is. Like, yeah, I mean I still absolutely adore the game, to be fair. Like, and I do plan on playing it and playing as Leon A and then Claire B, and doing that
Hmm.
sort of side to it. So yeah, I mean, I guess maybe it's for the best then that I didn't play that because I probably would have spent the whole time like you, like really analysing it and being like, they've took loads out when really when you play it fresh, like you don't think they've took loads out, but because you know better, you're like, they've took loads out, like everything feels
Yeah.
so different. So like I totally get that. Um
I will say that that's one of the only things they kind of took out. That Resident Evil 2 plays probably the most true in the sense of the remakes.
mm,
RE1 is quite close too, and they rejig a few things and what have you. But RE2 plays very true. It's another game that I have a really big problem with, but we'll get to that when we get to that.
I guess that
When
would
the
be get
time
to it.
comes, we'll get to that one.
I just yeah. I think I wanted to say like, if no one's played the originals, like sometimes it's good to jump into the remake. But it's actually
Yeah.
quite good the points you've brought up because now I'm thinking to myself, I can't wait to play like the remake of two. I mean the original of two,
Hmm.
because I know that it's going to feel like a totally different game.
Yeah.
Um,
I will help you with that. I think you'll be really impressed with the originals because I think you'll be impressed how much the PS1 game can do,
mm.
like, and how it doesn't look like trash and the things that they can do. I mean, people critique the graphics all the time because it's aged, obviously, many, many years now. But I think you'll be impressed with how much the games achieve, considering they're like, 20 odd years old.
I mean, I'm not hugely bothered by graphics. Like, I feel like we almost say this in every single episode, but like,
Yeah.
I'm generally not bothered by them. And even though like the RE1 remake is absolutely like like it looks beautiful, you can't really
Hmm.
fault it. The graphics are still very basic when we look at what we used to now.
Oh, yeah,
Um,
definitely.
and I wasn't obviously sort of taken aback by anything there, but I don't think the graphics will really kind of annoy me because I'm going to appreciate it a lot more. I quite like the fact that I'm doing it backwards and that I'm playing the remakes and then the originals because I don't know. I guess it kind of gives me a bit more of a broader understanding of what's kind of changed rather than playing the originals and then the new ones and thinking, oh, that's missing. It's almost like doing it backwards gives me a bit more of like a clearer idea of it.
I feel like you'll get to appreciate the modern game for what it is rather than having it tarnished by your memory of what it should be,
Yeah, exactly. I think
which
that's
is
what it
kind of the
is.
thing that I have to deal with. Like,
Because it's almost like for me, like for anyone who wants to play the remakes first, it's almost like you're experiencing something new anyway. But even by going back, you're still experiencing something new. You're not
yeah.
kind of like, oh, well, that's not how I remember it. You know,
Hmm.
so it's
Yeah.
not. I guess that's kind of the benefits of doing it backwards.
I
So
guess so, because I found myself critiquing. I mean, for 1, 2, and 3, I found myself picking up, well, that's different. Well, that's not the same. Well, that character didn't go there in that one. Like, and even though I'm upset by the fact that those things didn't happen, it annoyed me because I couldn't turn it off. I couldn't turn off the whole like that's not the same. That's not the same. And some things I think should be different because it allows for more, creative flow or what have you. But some things were ruined by changes, and that upset me. And I almost wish I didn't know about the original moment because I wouldn't have compared it to anything. And I'd been like, oh, that's interesting. I wouldn't have been like, oh, well, that ruins this because now this doesn't make sense, and this part of the story that I really enjoyed, 20 years ago now like doesn't fit in. Like, it's quite annoying. So in a way, you've done it the right way, I guess.
yeah, you could.
In a
Yeah, I
way.
guess. Yeah, I guess I kind of have, but I think that's
Hmm.
like only natural as a gamer, especially like as gamers, we get very passionate over certain games and certain genres and certain sort of franchises that we absolutely love. And
Yeah.
when that gets kind of messed with, or someone else doesn't like it, or something like that, you're always a bit like, "Excuse me," you know. So
Yeah.
like, you can't help but, yeah, you can't help but judge things. I mean, I had that when I was playing Mass Effects, which you've never touched the Mass Effect series.
I
But I was a
haven't. No.
huge fan of all three of the original games. And then when they brought
Hmm.
Andromeda out, I couldn't help but compare it to the original trilogy. And I was just like,
Hmm.
no. So I'd have been the same, 100%.
It's true because whether people like to, people can who outsiders who don't game can say what they want, like it's just having fun. But at the end of the day, it's like your favorite film, your favorite song, your favorite book, your favorite whatever. These things do mean a lot to you, and they do shape you in some way of your life. Like Resident Evil was a huge part of my childhood, and I love it very dearly. And when you see something not done correctly, it's like, it's like you're attacking my thing. Like this is my personal game, and like I love it for this reason. You've attacked it for that reason. It's like when you see people. This is what annoys me. When you go to like the cinema with your friends and you watch a film, and someone has read the book because you didn't even know there was a book, but apparently there was a book, and they watch it and you go, it's not as good as the book. Like, and even though that's annoying to hear, it's true. Like, it's your thing. You've enjoyed it in that way, and you don't want it ruined by someone else coming and trying to make it better. You're like, oh, don't touch my thing. Like, don't
Yeah.
touch my shit. It's mine. Like,
Yeah. No, yeah,
so it's
definitely.
only natural, isn't it?
It's true. It's true.
So, moving on to a little bit more of the gameplay. So, Mr. X, what did you think?
I was not expecting him at all. Like, I think
He's
Mr.
very good in
X.
the remake.
Wow, yeah, because I don't know what he's like in the original, but my God, he had me absolutely stressing for like the entire game on both
Hmm.
both playthroughs as well. So like when I started it as Claire, I just wasn't. I didn't know what was going on. Like
Hmm.
I just remember putting out some flames, go around this corner, and then I was like, okay, so I guess I go here, and I was like, oh no, I don't, and then I ran away, thinking, right, let's just run away. And then I was like, he's not going to follow me. And then all you hear for like the remainder of a large part of the game is just these footsteps. And it's like they've channeled my like inner child who was like
Yeah.
terrified of getting like chased up the stairs and stuff. Do you know what I mean? Them
Yes.
footsteps are just awful. And like, yeah, I just didn't like him, but I loved him at the same time because I just thought the way they've done that, like the tension and the anxiety of it, like he's not scary. He's more he's it's just anxiety inducing and making you feel
Yeah.
really cautious. It's like fright or flight. Do you know what I mean? You're like,
Yeah.
what do I do? Like, can I go down that corridor because I can hear his footsteps and he is slamming doors, but I don't know
Hmm.
what doors he's slamming. I don't know if they're near me, but he's
He
brilliant.
he's done so well, and I feel like what they did really well with him is they've made him in a different way to the original, because he's very frightening in the original as well, but he's not the same. So obviously technology was very limited. He can't follow you around everywhere, but he can walk through doors and will come and get you. But the thing is, he's semi scripted. So he will appear at certain times, but you don't know when he's going to appear. And suddenly, I mean, there's bits where he bursts through a wall, or he might just suddenly open a door when you're in a corridor and come for you, and the door outward is locked and you're trapped. You think, shit, he's coming towards you. What do I do? What do I do? There's a fantastic part in the original where you walk in, he's been gone for ages. You think he's actually gone now. And you walk into a room and there's an option to look at a TV screen, which is a camera, and you can do this if you want or if you don't want to. You haven't got to look at it. If you look at it, you see that he's like 3 feet behind you. You're like, oh shit. And if you don't look at it, you turn around and leave the thing, and there he is in front of you, and he like picks you up, and it's a whole big. It's like
That is,
that.
yeah.
It's really, really cool. So in the original, he's frightening in that way because you don't know where he's going to be. In the remake, I think it's done in a different way. I don't think it's any better or any like worse. It's just a new fear because you can hear him walking wherever he is. You can hear if he's far away, if he's close, and he hears you. Like if you've seen the behind the scenes stuff, he actually does track you on your own footprint. So if you run, he knows where you are because he can hear you better. If you're not using a silencer and you shoot, he can find you. Like, have you ever played? Did you play with headphones or not?
Yeah.
When you did, the sound design in the remake is fucking fantastic,
Spot on.
and
Yeah.
he is so much a part of that. Like hearing him behind your head, but like up somewhere, and you think, oh my god, he's upstairs, he's coming.
Yeah.
It's brilliant.
You can definitely tell like the directions, and you can almost feel like how like weighty he is, because like his
Yeah.
footprints just sound so heavy, and like kind of like a chain kind of like shake. It's just very like intimidating, you know.
Uh-huh.
And his eyes are just so like grey and cold, and the fact that you can shoot his little hat off made my day,
Yeah,
because
and
I
get a
just
trophy
popped it
for it.
off. It just popped off, and I was like, oh my god, your hat. And I was like, no. But yeah, I
Don't
love
kill me,
him.
I'm sorry.
I know, well, I'm sorry. But he surprised me. He really surprised me the first time with Claire. And then I was surprised even more so with Leon, because I felt like when I did Leon B's playthrough, he came super early. Like I didn't expect him that early on. I think it was about 40 minutes
Mhm.
into my playthrough, and I was like, "What already? I've got to start with him at the beginning, basically."
Yeah.
Um, and I don't know if it was just me, but obviously I felt like Leon's playthrough was a bit more challenging compared to Claire's. Like the second playthrough as Leon, I felt a bit more like it was more difficult. Like I was getting downed a
Oh,
lot more.
interesting. Why do you think?
I don't know. I just felt like I don't know. I felt like Mr. X was obviously he was there very early. Sometimes I didn't know if it was just me being sort of like paranoid, but I felt like he was faster. I don't know if that's a legit thing. I felt like my health was worse. Like I felt like the attacks on Leon hit harder. And it just I think overall it just felt a little bit more difficult. But then obviously things are in different places, and that adds to it. So I think with things being moved around and Mr. X early, overall like you're already kind of like completely thrown off, you know, and you
Yeah.
feel like you know the place, but you don't, because you sort of see different areas that weren't originally open. So everything's still kind of like different. So maybe it was that, but I don't know. I felt like it was harder on the second playthrough. I need to look it up, see if it actually is or not.
Well, it's not, but the reason I think that you think that is because Resident Evil has dynamic difficulty. So,
Um,
and I've watched you play Claire, and I watched your whole Claire playthrough because you did it on Twitch, and I watched most of your Leon playthrough, and you were playing better as Leon because I think one, you knew the layout of the PlayStation a bit better, and you were more adept at the shooting and stuff. Because obviously, as you've now played an entire game at shooting, you're now better at your aiming and what have you. So the more the better you play, the harder the zombies bite you, the more health you will lose, like the less ammo you pick up, the harder the hits you receive. Like everything gets a bit harder, obviously, except the puzzles. The puzzles are the same, but any attacks become harder. It's like if you're doing terrible, if you're missing all of your shots and you're constantly getting bitten, every time you're bit, it takes away a less amount of health than it would. Like you will find more ammo on pickups. You're more likely to pick up ammo than you are to pick up useless stuff, and you might find health. I feel like you were playing better, and the game was rewarding you in a way by making it more difficult.
that makes sense then, because
Yeah,
yeah, that would
is that
make
such a
sense
clever
then.
system though?
It is
I
a
mean, the
really
fact
clever
that
system.
it affected you straight away.
Yeah, it's like it already knew. And then I
Mm,
guess that makes sense, because sometimes you do get to a point where like say you die a few times and it offers like assisted mode, and I was like, no, I'm not doing assisted.
yeah.
And then it was kind of a bit easy, and then suddenly it would yeah, so I do like that. I think that's really clever. I think most games should have it. I think more games should have dynamic
Hmm.
difficulty. I'm not a huge fan of trophies. Going off topic, I've just
Yeah.
been playing Mafia, and they've got a classic difficulty, which is actually quite like really challenging. But I wanted to do it because I wanted the trophy for it, and I kind of I I wish they didn't do that, because I don't like feeling like I have to play like that. I wish it would just get harder, you know?
Yeah.
Um, so I love that about that Resi. I don't know if they do it in 3. Obviously 1, it wasn't a thing. It was pretty much a set difficulty. So we'll see.
In 2 and 3 they do. They have 3 has a lot of difficulties. I mean, off topic, but it has easy, normal, hard, and then it has um Inferno, Nightmare, Hardcore. It has like a load of other hard difficulties that get like progressively more harder. But what they have in common, RE2 and 3, is they have the top difficulty spike. So for RE2 it's hardcore. It plays like the original game, which just goes to show how easier games have become, because it plays with the ink ribbons. So the ink in the originals, I don't know if you know this, I'm sure you do from playing the first remake, you can't save the game unless you've got an ink ribbon. So on number 2 hardcore and number 3 hardcore and up, you need to save with ink ribbons. So you can't just auto save after a long trudge. You can't just beat a boss and then get an auto save or save the game really easily. You need to have your ink ribbon. So it makes it like much more difficult, because if you have to stop playing for whatever reason, you haven't got an ink ribbon, you're screwed. If you have no ink ribbons and your health is on like critical, you're like, oh shit, there's a big boss coming ahead. You have to figure a way around it. Like you can't just save the game and think, oh, I'll just keep trying until I win.
That's a
Like
good
there's also
point.
that.
I feel like the strategy side of it did kind of weaken in Resi 2 compared
Hmm.
to Resi 1. I mean, I still like to be quite strategic and figure out what it was that I wanted to take, and if I needed more health and ammo and all that kind of thing. But it definitely felt like not as strategy heavy as
Yeah,
RE1 did.
you can nuke a lot in RE2. You
Mm.
can just find your strongest gun and go to town. I did find in RE2 when I played it, if I remember right, I haven't played it in a while, I always finished the game with a shit ton of ammo.
I
Like
had
a lot of
loads.
ammo.
Everyone was laughing at
Loads.
me because I had.
Oh, you had loads for a different reason though, and let's talk about that very quickly. You don't kill anything. Why don't you kill anything? This is why you kept getting bitten and kept dying, because you didn't kill anything, and it was really starting to piss me off.
Right. In my defense, okay, I I've learned I don't right. I shot right. Obviously, maybe I am the only one that does this, but
Yeah, you are.
I'd stay in the mode of whatever game I was playing, and because I'm playing literally the Resis back to back, I keep staying in a particular kind of mode. So when I was playing Resi 1, I was all about not using any ammo, like making sure I didn't really kill too much because I didn't want crimson heads or skulls, whatever they were called,
Yeah.
and I was trying to dodge everything. Then when it got to RE2, I couldn't dodge, but I was just still kind of like, well, I don't want to use all my ammo because obviously Birkin is getting worse and stuff. And like, I just thought I need to save this because eventually I'm going to get to a point where I'm probably going to need a lot of ammo. So yeah, okay, that is why I'm still in that mode.
You don't need 400 handgun bullets to kill a boss. Like, you would
Oh,
collect like grenade launcher rounds, shotgun shells, all this other shit,
it
and
makes
then
me
you'd be
feel
like,
safe.
oh, I better just save 300 handgun bullets because you never know. Then you'd run into a room that you'd been in 7 times that you didn't need to go in again. And you'd be like, oh my God, this guy's here. Oh, he's bitten me again. I was like, fucking kill it. What are you doing? Like, you've been in this room 4 times, and I know that you're going to have to come back in here more times. I was like, kill the damn zombie. What are you doing? And you're like, no, I'm really good at dodging. And then you get bitten 3 seconds later. And I was like, look, dodging is not your
You're
skill.
acting
Kill them.
you're acting like I'm not that good at it, bitch. I was all right, okay?
I
Like,
love it. You couldn't even celebrate yourself. I was all right.
I
Not
had
even.
I had a shit ton of ammo and I finished the game. Leave me alone.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Okay, sure. But yeah, no, you did do a very good job.
Fuck
Respect,
off!
yeah.
How can you say?
You did
I'm like low key pissed off. I'm like, leave me alone, right? I thought I was
Loki.
doing fucking good. Okay.
No,
Shit.
you did a really good job. You did. You know, if I was playing and I had the control in my hand, I would have used a few more of those rounds.
I know.
But even for let's say even for a seasoned player like myself, there was still a lot of extra handgun ammo, especially on standard. Now, standard is not easy. Standard is meant to be your normal difficulty. So I
Mhm.
played the very first time I played it on standard. I finished with a ton of ammo left over. And I was like, wow, maybe standard mode is really easy, whatever. Then when I played Resident Evil 2 on hardcore, at the beginning, I found ammo a bit scarce. And then by the middle of the game, I picked up loads. And it wasn't, I wasn't being bit all the time. I didn't die loads of times. I think I died twice or no, once or twice in my entire playthrough. Like it was fine, but I was still picking up loads of ammo, and I thought, why is there so much? Like that was my only thing. I thought it was a little bit too much. It made me feel a little bit too safe because in the original, there's like times when you're like, I have fucking nothing, and you're walking, and you've got to walk through a corridor with a bunch of zombies, and I feel like the originals would fit you better because the originals are games where you're like, I really have to conserve my ammo. I have 9 handgun bullets. I need to kill that one zombie and I'll have to dodge the other 3. Like in those ones, you have to pick what you kill. The remake, not so much. But anyway.
Do you know what? I had an absolute mountain of gunpowder. That was the main thing that I had, just a shitload of
Yeah.
gunpowder. But the thing is, though, if I'm in like a zombie game, like obviously it's a survival game, and to me, survival means keep as much shit as possible. So
Hmm.
I kind of feel like a bit weird when you can just shoot stuff, but I guess that was kind of the style of it. Like it's not meant to be like super hard on standard maybe. But like
Hmm.
if you saying that on hardcore you still had a shitload of ammo, to me that just seems weird. It's like I want to feel like I haven't got much and I want to feel like glad that I saved that stuff when I there was no point really shooting a few of them. Do you know what I mean? But
Yeah.
obviously it seems to be a thing where like you do end up with quite a bit of ammo. So health was a bit of an issue. I didn't herbs were a bit short for me. I think I didn't have too many herbs. But
Hmm.
like
Because
yeah,
you wouldn't kill anything and had so
yeah,
much
that's
ammo,
probably
but
what
kept
it
being
is.
bitten. That's probably why. But anyway.
Okay.
But no, it's like that's it. It's different styles of playing. Just go to show you can play it any way you want. So you can either save all your ammo and just try and do your best to dodge everything. You can go on a complete annihilation path and destroy everything in sight and what have
Mm.
you. Because like RE1 does a really good way of tricking you into thinking that's a good way to play because in RE1, it's best for the first half of the game to not really kill that much because they end up being replaced by hunters. So either way, a new enemy will appear there. So for the first half, you can dodge and then you kill the hunters instead. Whereas RE2, you need to kill that thing to get it out of the corridor and board up the windows so more enemies don't come. Or like you have to think about the way you do things in that sense. So yeah,
Plus they have
you can play it anyway.
lickers. Plus they have lickers, and I was trying to avoid the lickers
Yes.
at all cost by walking
Hmm.
everywhere. And they're
The,
they're they're creepy.
the liquor introduction in the remake. What do you remember about it when the liquor was introduced?
Yeah, so the first meeting with the liquor for me, I think it was on like the ceiling and then it kind of dropped its tongue down and it was like dribbling everywhere. And I was just like, what on earth is this? Because I didn't know what it was.
Yeah. See, that's in the RE2 remake. I feel like they could have done a bit of. See, it's difficult because then they know they're going to be playing towards fans of the game who already have had the iconic intros. So they have to kind of
Mm.
play with it. But I feel like they could have done a bit of a better job in introducing the liquor. In the B scenario of whoever you play, I think it's the B scenario, they do a nod to the original where, where you go, how can I explain to you? When you're in the main hall and then you take a left and you go into that room that has
And the
like a little
tongue,
cashier's desk.
the on Leon's, when I went through one of the gates, from like the corner, this tongue just kind of grabs, but you don't see the liquor. Like
It
I just
grabs
knew it
the
was that.
policeman by the neck, that
Yeah,
bit.
yeah.
Yeah, so before you go through that door, there's a window on your left. In the original, a liquor walks past the window so quickly, and you can't even really see what it is, but you're like, what the fuck is that?
Mm.
And then you go into the room, and then slowly you meet the liquor, and the big introductory scene happens where the liquor drops off the ceiling. It's a whole FMV. It's really good. In the remake, I felt like it was a little bit like, I suppose a lot of us know they're coming, so it's hard to make a really dramatic, exciting intro. But still, I felt they could have made it a bit more dramatic, a bit more like, holy shit, what is that thing coming towards me? Like a bit more like oomph to it. Do you know what I mean?
Like with the what was it called? The thing that I kept saying was a crocodile, but it wasn't. No, dinosaur, but it was a crocodile or something. In there with Leon, and you're in the sewers, and basically you have to run, but
Oh,
the
when you
camp.
said yeah, the crocodile, and you were like, oh my god, there's a dinosaur. I was like,
I
this
know,
isn't Jurassic Park. This
I know.
is...
I was like, it's a dinosaur. That was a good intro because I was
Let's
not
pause about
expecting
that for a
that.
second, because can you please tell the people how many times you died to the crocodile?
It's embarrassing. I think it was like 4 or 5 times.
whole time. It's like
And
the
then I finished
first.
it and I was like, this is annoying because this ain't even fucking hard. Surely I'm
Not
not the only
hard.
person. I can't be the only person. I don't know what it was. I don't know. I have no excuse. I don't fucking know. I thought
I.
I didn't think it was gonna I didn't think it was gonna literally be a scripted left right. I thought it generally was like going towards me. So I was like panicking. And it weren't. It's scripted as fuck.
In the original, the fight is just as bullshit, but like it's a,
Mm.
you feel like you're doing more in the original than the remake because it makes you believe it's a proper fight, like a showdown, and it really isn't. It's really basic, bitch easy. But you you got okay, so you were eaten twice running away from it because you kept running into the boxes, which I thought was hysterical. And then you were like, I watched your whole stream and you were like, okay, I can do it, guys. I can do it this time. And you got past the running and you slid down the little sewer ramp and you turned around. The crocodile bites onto the giant metal pipe that says flammable and there's like gas coming out the side. And then you stood there and you physically went, like, what do I do now? Do I just like, is it gonna like blow up? Like, should I just watch it? And then I was like furiously typing in the chat, like, shoot it, you idiot. Like, what are you doing? Shoot, shoot, shoot. But there's like a 2 minute delay on the chat. So like it's taking someone to get through. And then I didn't even know that cutscene existed where he was able to push through the pipe and eat you. I did not know that cutscene existed until I watched you play because I've never seen anyone not attempt to shoot the giant pipe saying flammable, do not shoot. Like
Yeah. Well, there was a grenade, so like I ran to the grenade and was like, "Oh, maybe I throw this," and then it was too fucking late.
it was a lot. Thank you for letting me rinse you about that because that gave me a lot of joy.
I hope that everyone else did the same thing and they all support me in this because I don't feel like it was that obvious. Because in the moment, like I
Okay.
don't feel like it's that obvious. Well, it weren't for me, anyways. I didn't think it was that obvious because there was a grenade and it almost looked like I could go right, so I didn't feel like any kind of urgency to turn back and shoot a pipe.
No urgency. There's a giant crocodile
I
trying to eat
know,
you. There was no urgency.
but I'm pretty sure there was like flames or something near it anyway, and that makes no sense.
I'm just gonna lightly shake my. Do you know what? Well done, hun. You did really well. You're doing amazing, sweetie, as Chris Jenner once said.
Is this the Resident Evil fucking roast? Or are we gonna have a
This is
discussion?
yes. Look, you did really well. You completed the game. I'm allowed to reach you about one thing. It's fine. Two things. It's fine. You did well.
Yeah, it's good.
Okay, so then did you find the crocodile? Did it fit, or did you find it was out of place, or how did you feel about that scene? Because when I watched you play it, you were like really shook. You were like, "What the fuck? Oh my god! Like, is that a dinosaur? What's going on?" Like, there was a lot of confusion. Did you think it fit in with the universe, or do you think it was a bit random?
Um, I think it was random, but because
Hmm.
obviously they had like the little G monster things that were falling around at the sewers with Claire, it was kind of like half expected that there was probably going to be something else, but I weren't
Hmm.
quite expecting it to be, yeah, like basically a crocodile in the sewers. Like that for me was just a bit odd, but it's possible. I mean, anything's bloody possible in that game. But it
It's
did feel a
true.
bit out of place, like in the beginning. But then I just sort of accepted it, and I thought, really, can I say that a crocodile is out of place when you look at everything else in the game?
Hmm. It's based on that old myth, which is like from New York, I think, where like they flushed baby crocodiles down the toilet and they would live in the sewers and stuff. Like, it's based
Oh,
on that whole American notion that there's actually loads of crocodiles in the sewers and you just don't know about it.
that's interesting. We
It
don't
is.
have that.
No, we don't have that. Like, our sewers don't like steam through our streets like they do in America. There's not a lot of myths about our sewers. They just collect shit, really, don't they? That's, they do their basic function. There is a note somewhere, and I don't know if it's in the remake or the original. I'm tempted to think it's in the original, and it does state. I think it's Chief Irons does it. I think he says he has a baby crocodile and he puts it in the sewers after it's been infected, or one of the Umbrella higher ups, or something. I don't remember it, and someone probably knows better than I do. But there is a note somewhere that's meant to explain, in quotation marks, um, how the crocodile got there, and it's meant to have been someone's pet that was injected with the T virus, and then it got too big, and they chucked it in the sewer, and it just carried on to grow and grow and grow. So, you know, very realistic.
Very realistic.
Yeah, like everything
Concrete
else in that game,
evidence. Yeah.
concrete evidence, completely realistic. Um, Yeah, so crocodiles in the sewer. Okay, so moving on from that, now that you've played both Claire and Leon, you have met both these side characters that you get to do a little portion of. So you met Sherry when you played with Claire, and you meet the famous Ada Wong when you play
Ada
as
Wong.
Leon. First about who was your favourite to play as, Sherry or Ada?
Okay, I really enjoyed Sherry's
Hmm.
playthrough because there was just
Okay.
something kind of different and fun, and I really like the fact that it was just that you can't attack back, you know?
Yeah.
So you're just kind of like running and hiding, and I really, really enjoyed that. Ada's was okay. I just kind of felt like, I don't know, I just was a bit like, I don't really know what's going on with the whole like electrics and opening gates, and then Mr. T's there. Mr. T, I keep calling him Mr. T. Mr.
Mr.
X is
T.
there.
I ain't getting no plane.
Pity,
Oh, I'll pity the fool.
which I fucking was because I was getting so fucking annoyed with Ada's section. I couldn't get out of the flames, and it was so obvious, but I kept fucking up. Um,
That
Obviously,
is a hard bit though, because you have to move really quickly and it's
yeah,
locating all the different locks and blah blah blah.
yeah. So yeah, Ada's like, I think Ada in general, like I kind of like her as a character. It was a bit sad at the end on mine when she falls, and I was like, oh, rip. But overall, I really liked. I just liked playing as Sherry. I think it was just a really nice kind of change of pace, as to kind of be this, yeah, this little innocent person who's having to kind of fight her way out. And obviously Chief Irons is about to taxiderm some poor woman, and it's just very dark and twisted, and I love it.
Okay, that's another thing I spoke to you about before. They don't explain who the woman is that he's taxidermying on the
No.
table, but in the original, they do. So you might know now because I think we've discussed it before, but that is the mayor's daughter. So what Chief Irons explains to you when you meet him as Claire, which is very bizarre. The meeting with Claire is so weird and it's so casual. And he
Yeah.
turns a gun on Claire and he's like, "Oh, I thought you were another zombie." Like in typical Ari style, it's very cheesy. But he explains to you that he's been charged with protecting the mayor's daughter. And he's like, "But she's been bitten and very soon she will turn. And then I can shoot a bullet through her head or I can decapitate her entirely." Like it's very bizarre. And it's clear that he's just a bit fucked up.
Mm.
And then in his office, just like in the remake, you see that there's lots of like taxidermied birds and squirrels and shit. So he's gonna like do something really grim to her. But yeah, in the remake, they don't explain who she is, and she's just this woman on the table. There's the what if stories you can play, which weren't that interesting, but they're like they make up fake scenarios, and it kind of gives you a bit of a backstory of who she is, but not really. Like it's
No.
not really. It's like what happens if she never really died and she escapes from Chief Irons and has to get back to her boyfriend in the prison cell. Like obviously they're all what ifs, they're not canon whatsoever. But yeah, they don't explain who she is, which is really interesting. But
I think that's kind of
yeah,
one of the things that the game's lacking, in comparison to Resi One, where you read obviously a lot about Lisa and you kind of get a full understanding of who they are and like what how she ended up there and all that kind of thing.
yeah,
You don't get as much of that for certain characters in Resi Two. I've noticed there's definitely
yeah,
not a big kind of backstory to it. Like there is a bit of a backstory, but like not as intensely as the original games. I know it's a remake, but I would still class it as like an original. Do you know what I mean? Purely for the
yeah.
fact of how it plays and like, you know, compared to the remake.
Well, because essentially this is the new canon now. You know, remaking the game, this is the new canon that you're making. So you're remaking the story from the get go. So what new narrative are you going to go with? And I can't decide whether they left out as a mistake, left out because it wasn't relevant, or because they thought people might already know who she is from the remakes, or it wasn't important at all and they decided that she didn't need a backstory. She didn't need to be the mayor's daughter. She had no relevance. She's dead anyway. What does it matter? Which, you know, fair point. That has its place too. But I feel like you like to know these little bits, especially when they were explained previously. You feel like if you're going to include it, have that little note. It hasn't got to be a whole hour long of who she is. It could literally be 4 words where you could turn around to Sherry and say, "Oh, the mayor's daughter, like she's dead now," something like that. Just anything, just a few words would have been enough. But
Mm.
maybe they chose that she wasn't important enough. But then they gave her a what if story, which I thought was weird. If you're not going to explain who she is, why give her own little section of the game?
Yeah, and I think it's a really
Bit
it
dumb.
could have been so easily done, couldn't it? There could have just been a
Hmm.
little something left on her, or like just a note in her hand from like the president or something. You know, just
The
something
mayor,
really
yeah,
kind.
yeah,
The mayor, sorry, like
yeah,
it would have just, yeah. And I see that's the thing I really liked about these games. Well, Resi One when I was playing it was how much of a story I felt was actually there. You know, like it
Hmm.
was a bit of a slow start, but it was very much a lot of reading, but there's a lot of story in it. And then Resi 2 was kind of just, yeah, it didn't kind of have that. I mean, it is very story based still, I guess, yeah, but like it doesn't have that kind of extra level to it.
Yeah, that's the thing. And I think with some of the side characters like Sherry and Ada, I really did enjoy their stories. They didn't make things as clear as they were in the original, I suppose, but they still made them interesting. So for Sherry, like her original playthrough bit is she does a lot of she's very independent and does a lot of things sometimes to help her dad or to help you. So there's a point in the game where Claire she runs away from Claire because she hears her dad screaming, and the Sherry's like, no, Claire's like, Sherry, stay with me. Like, you'll stay here, be safe. And she's like, no, Claire, I have to help my dad. And she climbs over this fence. Then you take control of Sherry. And then you go up this little lift, and there's actual zombie dogs there. So there's enemies. And obviously, you've got no knife, no gun. You can't wield any weapons. And that to me was a little bit more frightening because there was an actual threat that I could easily take care of if I was Claire or Leon or Ada, but I can't take care of that I'm Sherry. And I have to actively dodge the dogs or dodge the zombies. I feel like that I would have liked to have seen her exposed to the enemies a little bit more. Like I thought it was really interesting that they had a whole thing with Chief Irons and that he's worse than any zombie could be because who knows what weird sexually depraved things he would do to her or what he plans on doing to her. Maybe he plans on killing her and stuffing her too. Like he's frightening enough, but I think it would have been nice if she was exposed to some kind of zombie threat too.
Yeah.
I don't know how you feel about that. Do you think that been she could have braved the elements a little bit more or
Yeah, because she's obviously quite a strong girl, isn't she? She kind of
yeah,
has
very
like a bit of,
smart.
yeah, she has like a bit of a growth sort of. I mean, by the end of it, you see like she's fully putting herself at risk to escape, you know? So
Yeah.
like she's obviously got it in her. So I guess it would have been nice if there was more of an obvious time where you see where she's sort of just switched and growed. Like
Mhm.
growed, I don't know if that's even a word.
Grew.
But it grew. There you go.
Yeah.
Fucking hell. But it's like Resi 1, you Jill starts off really kind of basic, and then by the end of it, like you realize how she's when she flicks the gun out of his hand and stuff, like you realize,
Yeah.
okay, that's her point. That's her turning point. But
Mhm.
Sherry didn't really have a turning point
Yeah.
apart from when she sort of, I guess she steals the keys and that, but like it would have been good if she just, I don't know, had to, yeah, be more in the real world, you know.
Yeah.
So
I
that
get
would
what
have
you
been good.
mean. I feel like in the original, which you'll probably see when you play it, Sherry does come across as a bit more of an independent character. Like I think in the remake they made her very smart
I mean,
and
she does
very
whack him in the face with acid, so there is that, I
yeah,
guess. Like, I just
there
thought,
is
like, there
that.
is that moment, yeah.
She is very resourceful. I feel like they made her resourceful just in a different way. I don't think they ruined her character at all. I think they did her really, really well and really true to the original. But I feel like in the remake you just get to see a bit more of like a tough side to her. It gets to a point where like when Claire first finds her, she thinks Claire's a zombie. She tries to dodge her, and Claire has to literally catch her. And then when she reassures her that she's a human and she's normal, she just bursts out crying because you can tell that this little girl's been running from all kinds of horrors, and she's had to stay strong, to stay alert, stay alive. And then finally, she's like, "Oh my god, a friend," and has a bit of a breakdown, like a kind person. But I thought she was handled really, really well. With Ada, I feel like she was handled well too. They changed her story a little bit. So in the remake, Ada is there as an FBI agent, isn't she? So she's an FBI agent and she's here to investigate these weird goings on. And she can't tell you much because you're underneath her as a police officer.
Yeah, because
And
I didn't trust her because I thought she seems a bit, and she always appears in like unexpected places, and I was like, I don't know if I trust you.
yeah, she is. I mean, there's a lot to Ada's character. I mean, in the original, she has a different story. So she's not an FBI agent or whatever. She comes. Do you remember in the first game? And this is where they kind of fucked up a little bit because in the first game, even the remake, you found a note from a Professor John who was writing a note to his girlfriend Ada. And do you remember she was a password? ADA was the password for something.
Yeah,
Her whole story was that she had a boyfriend who worked with Umbrella, and this whole outbreak's happened and she's come to find him to rescue him. So that was her cover story. She's like, I'm here to rescue John, my boyfriend. We need to find John. And then she comes with you and you meet her at several different points. She's like, I'm looking for John. I'm looking for John. And then you almost feel like, where's this John guy? Like, let's hope we find him. Like, I bet he's going to be a zombie, or I bet he's going to be a monster. And you learn that really it was all a cover, and that she befriended this man called John and became his girlfriend just to get close to the
'Cause
G sample.
yeah, she's
Yeah,
clever. Like, you get that straight
yeah,
away off the bat. Like, you can tell, like, she don't fuck about, you know? Like, she's a really
yeah,
strong character. I think that's the great thing about this game is, even though, like, you're only sort of introduced to her briefly, you realize how, like, much of a strong character she is. Saying that though, I was quite laughing because we had Claire, who was looking after Sherry and having, all by herself, and she was totally, pushing through. And then we had Leon and Ada, and I remember in mine they were both absolutely battered, like
yeah.
they were just hardly making it through. He's like a fucking police officer, she works for the FBI, and then there's just Claire, who's gone to find her brother, and she's looking after a kid. And I
A
just thought,
uni
like,
student and a child. Yeah.
yeah, I was like, I love how, like, the two people you expect to be the strongest are like just fucking it all up, and then
hmm
Claire's just on one. I thought it was funny.
So Redfield genes, man. What can we say?
It's true. I wish I
Helping
was a
Claire out.
Redfield.
I
Yeah.
know, that'd be my dream. But yeah, you can completely tell that she's very manipulative and she's very smart, and she's obviously the top in her field. But I don't think she planned on basically having a crush on Leon,
Mm,
because when you go back and you see that she falls off of the ledge and you think that she's dead, and then when you fight the monster, that rocket launcher just somehow magically flies down, and then she says that iconic line of "You owe me one" or something, doesn't she?
yeah.
Or "Now we're even," as she drops it down, so you know that she's not gone. She's such a smart and interesting character, and they do build upon her in the games to come. Not in 3, you won't see her in 3, but in 4 and is she in 5? I can't remember. No, I don't think so. 4 and 6, you get to experience more of what Ada is, and the films too. It does get really crazy and the story gets really wild, but still, really great character. I love Ada. Oh, speaking of that, side note very quickly. So the new Netflix CGI
Mm,
film. So now we don't know if the original really bad plot line of Wesker's two daughters, it didn't really exist, whether that series, that live action series, will come to be, or if it's just going to be this CGI series of Claire and Leon. Don't know how it's going to go, but very interested to see how that turns out.
yeah. I mean, because I'm still sort of like fresh with Resi 2. I I saw the Claire and I was like, that's not my Claire. Do you know, like, that's not my Claire.
It's not. Do you know what Claire it is? If I'm right, it's the Claire from Resident Evil Revelations 2, and that's the ugliest Claire's ever looked. And that's no, I really feel really bad because a
That's
lot of
really
it is
harsh.
it's really harsh because that is mocap. So there is someone out there that does have that face, but it just doesn't
Oh,
translate well. Like, it just doesn't translate well to digital art. Like, I feel like it just really ages her, and she's not meant to be. Okay, so in Resident Evil 1, Barry says that he's got two daughters, and he says they're very young. In Revelations 2, you end up working with one of Barry's daughters, probably at about 19. So let's say it's been maybe 10 years, maybe just a bit under, after Resident Evil 1. So, okay, 10 years older, but she should be like maybe late 20s, early 30s, and she looks like she's in her mid 40s.
mm.
I just
So
think
it
that she
just
just
so it just doesn't work. It just
it
doesn't
just
work
doesn't
for you.
work. She's just not hot for me. I'm really sorry.
Oh, rip.
Rip.
Um, back to the game.
Back to the game.
I want to talk about Hunk's survival, or the extra part of it.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So do you know who Hunk is?
No.
The Grim Reaper. So Hunk is the operative of Umbrella, I believe. It's he's like Ada. His
Mm.
loyalties are not necessarily known, but he's like the Umbrella's like number one guy. He's the best of the best at what he does. And his nickname is the Grim Reaper because, once you meet him, game over. And his job is to secure different versions of the sample. And he appears in, does he appear in all of them? He might just appear in 2 onwards. He appears in 2. He has like he's discussed in 3 at some point as well, and you can do whatever. In the original, there's like a side game where you can play as him. Yeah, his job is just, he worked for Umbrella, and his job is just to be their little man on the side who does all their deeds and their dark bidding.
See, I never knew that, but I did play that extra part in Resi 2.
How hard is it?
Yeah, and I got really
Yeah.
annoyed because I was so close. I think I
Yeah.
actually was doing quite well
Hmm.
And I was actually getting quite far once I sort of clocked, like, okay, so I can't collect stuff, because I was thinking
Yeah.
hopefully maybe I could collect stuff. I got so far and then I weren't expecting Mr. X, and then that kind of threw me over. And then I got past that, and I think I was just always so close. It is
Hmm.
hard. It's not ridiculous, but you like, if you give yourself like a few runs, like, and you start to kind of know what you're doing, like, but it is definitely hard. Like,
Yeah, it gets easier each time you do it, but it is still very hard. I thought
yeah,
anyway.
no, yeah, definitely, because obviously you can't. It's an automatic grab, and it throws everything at you, and all your supplies are limited. So you've really got to know how many sort of grenades and that you want to save, and how much ammo you
Hmm.
want to save for like certain areas. But I love it. I just really enjoyed that. I thought it was just such a nice little kind of extra bit to have, like
Yeah,
being underground and playing on that side. Like, it's nice. It's nice. I like it, even though it's
they
hard.
ha- that is a whole thing. So in the original, they had mercenaries mode too, and it was the similar thing. But you in the remake, you only do it as Hunk. But in the original, you once you did it as Hunk, you unlocked a new scenario. So you could then do it as Ada, and you could then do it as whoever, and then you kept going until you unlocked Tofu. Have you heard this?
I've heard of tofu.
Yeah, so Tofu was like the one you unlocked last. It's literally a piece of food that goes around, and he has like extremely an abnormal amount of health, but only like a knife or only just something basic weapons, and you play as him. In the remake, you can continue doing it, and once you unlock Tofu, if you do him, you can get like 4 other different versions of this tofu food, and I can't remember what they're called, but you get different ones that have different sets of ammo and stuff. So I'm
I
glad that
love
they
it.
kept that in and took it where it needed to go. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Brilliant. I love it. I love it. I do want to. I'm looking forward to playing more of that and hopefully actually finishing it at some point.
Yeah, it's very, very good. And the what ifs, have you played any of the what if scenarios?
No, I haven't.
They weren't interesting to me. I played them and they were relatively fun, I guess, but I didn't really, for me, they didn't add very much to the game because there wasn't too much of a what if. You know, when you've played other games that have like a what if scenario, it's like something you completely wouldn't expect. So it's like really interesting. Like, oh yeah, what if that character didn't die? And what if they, how would that have happened? It was just a little bit boring. It wasn't very interesting. One is
Mm.
Kendo. So one is like if Kendo, after Kendo's daughter was infected, he just decides to go and escape and try and meet Jill or try and meet Claire or Leon and tries to go through the police station. One is the mayor's daughter, and if she escapes from Chief Irons, she has to go back to her boyfriend Brian in the prison. Brian in the original is never explained to be her boyfriend. This is just a complete random thing. And then the other one is, what's the third one? Is the third one Hunk? There is another one. I can't think what it is now. Anyway, there's 3 what if scenarios that are
Mm.
somewhat interesting.
Somewhat interesting, but not quite up to par.
Yeah, not quite
I
up to
guess I
par.
can't really. Yeah, I can't really think of anything in that game where I'm like, what if?
Oh, there is one more. Sorry, it's the sheriff. It's
Ah,
the
right.
sheriff. So the sheriff goes to the police are called to go to the convenience store where you first start off as Clara Leon, and he's locked
Mm.
inside there, and it's like almost like the cabin episode, which it's they did this in Resident Evil 4, and then they think it's okay to put it in every other Resident Evil, where you're trapped in one space and everything piles in. When you play Resident Evil 3, you'll play a very annoying part of the game that does something very similar. And yeah, I don't know why Capcom keep thinking everybody wants that, but just a side note, Capcom, I don't think anybody wants that, just in case you're listening.
So what, when stuff piles in, you don't.
When you're
It's not
trapped in
good.
one space, almost like a battle royale, you're by yourself and loads of zombies pile in through.
Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah,
can't. I'm not a fan of that kind of thing.
yeah, not a fan of that kind of thing. Yeah. I
No.
don't think anybody is, to be honest with you, but hey ho, there it is.
I mean, fair enough for like. I think fair enough sometimes, like a brief scenario where, but then you know that it's not really going to last long. But if it's like an actual full blown thing, it's a bit like, ugh, you
Yeah.
know.
There will come a time when we can discuss something else in another game which does something of that nature. And it's pretty shit. But anyway, moving on.
Just filling me with so much hope.
So much suspense. Um, okay, right. So we're kind of coming towards the end of our time now. So just very quickly, I want to ask you a couple of questions. So you've now completed Resident Evil 1 remake, and you've now completed Resident Evil 2 remake. Did the game get better for you? Did the games get better or did they get worse? Do you think RE2 is better than 1, worse than 1, on par? What's your kind of like final thoughts?
Okay, I can't answer this quickly. I
Oh,
think
okay.
I'll try and be super quick. Actually, I'll just be really blunt.
Okay, do that.
I I'm gonna say I like them equally, purely for the fact of there's more things I like in one for certain reasons, and there's more things I like in two for certain reasons. And I couldn't say either of them are better or worse.
Okay, fair.
I think maybe I'm slightly leaning more towards two, but I think that's only because of the gameplay and the and how modern it is and how it looks. And I can't help but feel like it looked beautiful and it had that kind of like resi vibe to it, and it's all kind of like modern. So literally, I'm
Mm,
like, yeah, that's brilliant. That's probably it. But then I did still feel like it was lacking things that Resi One had, where there was a lot more strategy to it. There was a lot more kind of context to certain things, and I kind of was a bit like, oh. So yeah, it's kind of like I like them equally. I don't think anything's better than the other one, but I have to say, from like modern games that I've played this year, I think Resi Two is like probably the probably one of the best games I've played this year for
yeah.
this gen, definitely.
Resi
What about
2
you?
for me, well, I'll say Resi 2 for me is fantastic. Like, I think it's such a good game. I think it's a really well done remake. Like, as a Resident Evil fan playing through it, I was impressed constantly. And there's nothing's ever perfect. There's always things that I can say, well, they missed out on this, missed out on that, but that doesn't at all destroy the game for me. I think it was so, so good. Um, I've played a Resident Evil remakes that don't quite live up to the original in so many ways, and it can be quite detrimental because quite a few things are missing or are done wrong or what have you. But this one, I can't really say that. I'm a bit peeved that the A and B scenarios weren't done perfectly because it didn't really make sense timeline wise, especially if you're making a new canon, so a new story. And there's a few little bits here and there, but literally nothing really to write home about. I think it's a fantastic game, and the things that gave me issues were so minimal, it's not even a big deal at all. I think it was done really well, it played really well, it sounded brilliant. It was just, it was just really bloody good. I just really liked it.
I think if anyone's to play it, would you say, weirdly enough, play the remake before the original
Oh, interesting question. Um,
to save yourself maybe feeling like, oh, I wish that was in it? You can just kind of freely enjoy it. What's your thoughts?
See, I don't know. I think I think if you play the original and then play the remake, you understand more of the story and more of the story, more of the grit, more of the way a Resident Evil game should quote unquote play. And then when you play the remake, you get to see how they've continued that formula and really stuck to how an RE game should play. And then you miss out on the few things that are lacking. So that's how I experienced it. That's how I still really enjoyed it. It didn't hold me back from enjoying it. The way you played it, I don't know. I suppose you get it. You might even fall in love with it more because it's your first experience of the second story, and then going back to play the original, it might not then live up to the modern gaming. You might think, well, I'm still playing an old game. Like they really weren't improving it. That's a hard one. No, I'm still going to say, I think play the original first. I still think I'm going to be part of that club. I feel like the original is done so well that there's not much missing from it. It's weird that a game that was made so long ago, in a way, has more content than a game produced today. And it's not a lot more. RE2 is like only fractionally missing a few key bits for me that intervene with story. And I think this again comes from me and you both being, well, you as well, like being story gamers. And to me, the story is so important. And if they fuck with a game mechanic that makes your controller go a bit strange or it makes something else go a bit funny, it's not a massive deal. But when it affects the story for me, it becomes a different scenario. I'm like, well, the story made more sense when you did X. Do you know what I mean? Like it makes more sense that
Mm.
in that way. So I would say to still appreciate where the game came from and to notice the improvements and notice how the bosses changed and how the development came about, I think play the original first. I'm just going to say
Fair.
that. Hmm.
Fair. I
That
did
was a
it
whole
wrong.
long yeah, you did it wrong, and I just gave a long monologue that no one really cares about.
Right, should we end it
But
there then?
I think we should end it there because we've said quite a bit. We're on quite a
We
lot of
have.
time now.
We have.
So
I hope the Resi fans enjoyed this one
yeah, I hope they did. I hope they did because
and see where we're coming from with our opinions.
yeah, hopefully they can get what we mean and where we're coming from and stuff. But yeah, so I overall I would say I love this game. I love the original, I love the remake. They're both great. You
Yeah,
remake, love it?
Remake, brilliant. I'm gonna start Resi 3 soon, so very excited for that.
Very excited for that. I can't wait for you to play that because that one's going to be an interesting conversation. Might even be a bit longer than this podcast because there's a lot to say on that one. Anyway, we'll get there. Right. So, thank you very much for listening and sticking with us. We've had quite a few episodes now, so it's nice to know that people are still somewhat interested in what we've got to say, which is really cool. So,
Yeah, we
thanks very much
appreciate
for
you.
listening. Yeah, we do. Oh, and we have a Twitter now, don't we?
Yeah, we do. So it is at TG Breakdown. Where obviously we'll be posting our episodes on there and just the things that we're doing
Yeah.
and just
And
being
more opinions that you
social.
didn't ask for.
Yeah, and we're going to start as well. We're thinking about doing some polls. So if to get some feedback, see what people want to talk about, our opinions on what they're enjoying, really, and just seeing what's happening.
Yeah, so if there's any game you think we should particularly talk about, feel free to let us know. Or if we do a poll, feel free to vote on what you think we should talk about, and we'll get round to it. We also have an Instagram at the same handle, TG
Mhm.
Breakdown. So if you're interested and use any of those social media platforms, then please give us a follow.
And we
Oh,
are in the process of getting YouTube set up as well, aren't we? To
we
make
are
sure we've got that.
indeed.
So it's people can you can just listen to us whenever you want. Then there's
Yeah, we're
there's no
attacking from every
hiding.
angle. Tweet
Yeah.
us, IG us, YouTube us, like MySpace us. No, that's not a thing.
We can't go down that with Bebo and Pixo
Yeah,
and no.
please find our Pixo. Follow the link to our MySpace, our Bebo, and our Pixo, and add our MSN.
Oh my god, Messenger.
That should be a podcast. Oh god. Right. Okay. Well, thanks for listening, everybody, and we'll see you in the next one.
Bye.
Bye.